to my viewers. It's Shirley with Spirit of Matter. And this episode is dedicated to Iniko, who is a fascinating artist. Um, Practically, but I believe they are two spirit. And you might accuse me of appropriation or whatnot, but then if you are watching my videos, then you know my own um, story, and so I stand by this statement. This is not Iniko's chart yet, and I will try to remember my own gender pronoun and say it correctly, which is they. So hopefully I won't have slips there, as I know it's very important for them to be gendered correctly. So the ascendant is on Spica, which is good. It's a great time to talk for eloquency, which is needed. It's ruled by Venus, that is in the 11th house, whole sign, and 10th house, Placidus. This is Venus is now the highest star in the heaven at the time of the beginning of this episode, and the midheaven is ruled by the moon, which is in one, two, three, four, fifth house, and fourth house, Placidus, and is ruled by Saturn, which is in the next house in Pisces. So Aquarius moon, kind of a good time to talk about them, okay? Um, as Aquarius is the structure outside the structure, and Venus in Leo, so a Venusian that is a singer, a performer, who is expressing themselves with their voice and making an impact. As Venus is closer to the midheaven is our impact on the world. In many cases, it's not just our career environment or our life mission, but more so some sort of legacy. So this is apparently a good time to talk about this. It's not pre-elected. Being Mercury Aries, I usually press record and then I come to this to see why did I do that. So today is Jupiter and the hour is Mars, which is surprising for me. So I've spent the whole Jupiter time watching interviews with Iniko and enjoying their music. Mars, the ruler of the hour Mars, is also in the 11th house in Leo. Um, yeah, it's the moon is separating from an opposition to Mars. Mars is separating from the square to Jupiter, separating almost not in orb in the relation of the opposition to Pluto. Um, what else is there doing? So I wonder why Mars. Like why Mars? But maybe I will find out through this episode, or we will find out through this episode. And so that's the setting, okay? This is the astrological setting in which this recording takes place. And unlike my usual Spirit of Matter episodes where I predict stuff, here I'm just going to delve into the chart, and which is provided by All Famous. So see what's in there. Can we show the birthday? Yeah. So Iniko were born in October 26, 1996, and that would make them Scorpio Sun. They are 26 years old. Ascendant. So ascendant looking very 29-degree Sagittarius. So Jupiter ruled ascendant, the Sagittarius Jupiter ruled. If this is indeed 29, it's an anaretic degree. So people with ascendant in the anaretic degree are people that can have premonitions, and they basically download a certain reality into being. Famous people that we know with ascendant on the anaretic degree are Donald Trump and Elon Musk. So it's interesting to look at a pretty much proclaimed or person who openly speaks about their being of shaman nature or two that is Iniko, and say like, hey, we also have shamans with 29th degree ascendant. Their Jupiter is Saturn ruled. Jupiter, the F is probably for retro. What is F? Ah, forward? Like, what is this F? Is it a retrograde? I don't know. 12. Okay, they have the same Jupiter as me, but mine is retrograde. So Jupiter on 12 degrees Capricorn, Saturn ruled. The ruler of the ascendant second. That means that the person's life path is very closely related with their value and their skill. So the joining of Jupiter and Saturn Capricorn can mean that they bring about certain philosophy that is of previous times. Okay, so Jupiter is expansion, Saturn is contraction. That can mean that the person can oscillate between expansion and contraction of their worldview, of their philosophy, and of their sense of overall happiness and well being. They also have Neptune there in 25 degrees of Capricorn. All in all, this is a person who can make a living by being them. Sometimes to even to the degree that they have to be themselves in order to make a living, because making a living from doing from our own skill is in the second house. And when the ruler of the ascendant there, so what is your skill? Your skill is being you. And you can practically say that Iniko is profitable by the merit of being Iniko. Who is Iniko? It's literally free spirit, okay? So free spirit. That is also sharing the story of constraint on the self, and a desire to be seen, or a longing, which is more of a Neptune word, to be seen. The ruler of the second house, that is Saturn here, is in 2 degrees Aries. What is the F? I don't know if it's, I guess it's forward. But why don't, I don't know. Like, I don't know what is the F, what is the E, what do they stand for. But here is the Saturn in 2 degrees Aries, opposing Venus. That whole sign speaking is in the 10th. So Venus here is in Virgo, and Saturn is, so Venus is applying to oppose Saturn. Saturn is Mars ruled. Okay, that would make Saturn, third, fourth, in the 5th house, whole sign speaking. You know, this can be very confusing because Placidus does it completely differently, and Saturn would be in the 3rd house. So 5th house speaking, that means that the ruler of how you make a living is in the 5th. So that can be through creative projects, for some people through their children, okay? Or your child can make make money, and then you get benefits or dividends from that. But in Iniko's chart, it basically denotes of a person who, by being themselves, are profitable, and that is something that is joyous to them. Okay, even though Saturn is a planet of contraction, it's kind of like, oh, the Saturn is bringing something, or Saturn is bringing this profit house to your leisure time. So what you're doing for a leisure time is actually work, and your work is being you. So this is something that very much is coinciding, or in concept. I'm not saying I've checked this astrologically, but it's very much in alignment with the concept of being a two-spirit, of being shamanistic. Um, and again, with Iniko, it is very, this is beyond their being they, okay? It's beyond their being they and their genderless being and experience is beyond beyond being gender genderless. okay, or queer, or however you call it. I use the word genderless because this is the word that they use. Um, but there is also an impact on the life of people that the reason for their being has to do with this impact. Um, and that is, it means that your job in the world is you, or your job in the world is to be this eternal child. So some performers that we see that are like this eternal child that is performing and bringing this youth quality, well, in this case is this Saturn going into Aries, so this the old and the new. Saturn representing as the ruler of Capricorn, as the ruler of the old times. Think that Capricorn rules mountains, and mountains is something that accumulates over time. And so the wealth of Saturn is bit by bit by bit, it's like climbing a mountain. And then we have youth there. We have Aries there, which is not youth by mercurial means, although Mercury is quite close to the midheaven. Yet another, but the Mars. This is the Mars of asserting your being, and so there's something new about who you are, or the who you are, which is Aries, the I am, is also in relation to what you do for leisure or your childhood spirit, child spirit, childlike, not childish in a demoting way, but childlike spirit. So in that sense, youthful spirit, innovative spirit. Another signification of the life path here is the third one is Chiron pretty much conjuncting the midheaven. So Chiron or the Chironic wound, it basically denotes of an aspect of our being that is not or was not fully accepted upon our upbringing. And the Chiron in itself is the archetype of the wounded healer, is the person who could help a lot of people, but when for them it's like they can't really find the medicine for them, they have to make it up, like they have to come about with it. And that process of this to the world, it can be tedious. Here's an aspect of ourselves that did not receive recognition or acceptance, both by ourselves and by our parents. And for that to conjunct the midheaven, yet another sign that tells us that we're not dealing with a pop artist per se, but actually a shaman or a healer, or the type of medicine of Chiron, which is the medicine that the native creates. We all have Chiron in our chart, okay? We all have this in our chart. And this is where what your teachers say, what your gurus say, what your healers say, what alternative, complementary and alternative, okay? It was not a slow word, or innuendo. What conventional medicine say, nothing is completely it. Okay, not the shaman of the city, nor the doctor of the city can heal you. You have to find it bit by bit, comprising it within yourself. We all have this in our chart somewhere. That being with the midheaven, it means that Iniko are known for that Chironic wound. And this is a Chironic wound to do with Venus, because it's midheaven and Chiron ruled by Venus. And so the path of healing or the path of medicine denotes divorce and denotes singing in their case. Yes, Libra is many other things. It's trade, it's beauty, it's balancing things, so the art of balancing things. And so it's triplicity lord is Mercury, which is genderless. And Mercury is the highest personal planet that is the closest to the midheaven. And Iniko defined themselves publicly as genderless. So Mercury being genderless, triplicity ruler of Libra, and Venus here in Virgo, retrograde. So the path of retrogression basically tells us with Venus, the native is the owner of the chart, the person being born, okay? So the native is going to play this personal planet out that is retrograde in a way that is their own. Okay? I am filled with gratitude to the teachings of Ksenia Moore and Lada Duncheva on planets in retrogression, which kind of revolutionized the old views that retrograde planets don't deliver, or they deliver askew or not. It's basically about making your own imprint that's related to this personal planet. And when this personal planet is Venus, it's both the voice of a person, it's the looks of a person, the style of a person. In Virgo is Mercury ruled. Okay, so yet another Mercury. So we have a person doing Venus in a way that is their own. So doing music. Iniko became famous by publishing their own reimagined versions, which is a lovely word. Like usually we use adaptation or cover, but Iniko used the word reimagined. And gave their interpretation of famous songs, later writing their own, or later publishing songs that they wrote. They wrote the first song when they were, I believe, 5 years old. As they said, it's 5. I get confused because I wrote mine at 6, so the number 6 plays out for me, and then it can come up and I think that they said 6. No, they said 5, I believe. So, that entire constellation kind of gives us many indications that we are not just dealing with a musician or a healer or a genderless person, okay, so or a gender experience per se, but we kind of dealing with a mixture of all of the above. More things evident. So the sun here is in Scorpio, 4 degrees. Okay, the moon opposes the sun, so they were born on a full moon. By the way, the moon is right on the speaker's Venus, which is my Venus. So they have exalted Taurian moon, full moon, opposing this sun in Scorpio. Okay, so Scorpio is Mars ruled. Here the sun is Mars ruled. We'll touch that Mars soon. And there is this nice perception between a 28 degrees Leo Mars and a 4 degrees Scorpio sun. So reception is where Mars is in the sun of the sign of the sun, that is Leo, here ruled by the sun, while the sun is in the sign of Mars, which is Scorpio. So one of the signs of Mars is Scorpio. So there's this nice reception between Mars that, we still wonder how to interpret this Mars, because this episode was recorded on a Mars hour of a Jupiter day. So Jupiter, of course, Iniko is Jupiter rising, and their life path basically. Who they are is together with their values. Okay, so the value of being you. Yes, Mars is ruling Aries, which is the I am, so perhaps this is exactly where it is. Scorpio sun, so Scorpio is known for depth. Okay, it's the deep waters, still waters, or the waters that we have in the well. Okay, that is the underground water, still waters. Symbolizing of the depth of the soul, and deep spiritual insight and deep transformations. And the sun is basically our shine, our light, our confidence. And so for any Scorpio sun, it's basically taking a luminary deep down to the well, thereby shining a light on that darkness. Where Scorpios are very private people, so this gives privacy to a luminary person, which which is really interesting because when I think about the I'm a Lumineer that Iniko kind of sang on the Jericho reimagined version. And so the I am kind of connects with the Lumineer, and I'm trying to delineate that. The ruler of the sun, perhaps this ninth reception is one of them. They were born in a full moon. So I do not particularly profess in understanding the phases of the moon, other than being born within eclipses. I do not understand exactly what does it mean for the life path of the person to be born with the various moon phases. In general, a full moon is when something is fully revealed. The axis of the luminaries is the Scorpio-Taurus axis, and we're still within the eclipse cycle of Scorpio-Taurus. Rahu is still in this final passage in Taurus, about to go into Aries. From another perspective, and here I am interpreting on the method that Yair Tribelsky is a famous Israeli astrologer of the Pluto Sol generation. And what Tribelsky looks at for the native is basically a lot of the first things that he checks has to do with the sun and the moon. So this is basically the caregivers. Okay, some of these, both 9th house, 4th house, 10th house, 4th house, but also the sun and the moon. What is the relation, if any, between the sun and the moon? What did this person grew up with luminaries? And I have an anecdote to tell you about eclipses. I tended to look at eclipses a lot, so it was perfected for me. And Yair tends to look at the sun and the moon of the native. And the funny thing is that when I was talking about eclipses, he said, I don't understand why people are talking about what do the findings like. And then he said something. He said, eclipses, it's a changes in eyesight. It's the eyes. It's the change in the way you see things. But why do people make such a big deal out of it? And it was a very fine moment in astrological discourse that took place between two people that nobody heard it, but it was a very fine moment because he just explained to me why eclipses matter. Okay, the moon and the sun are the eyes. You've probably seen all the, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at changes. Both of the things you look at change and the way you look at things changes, and that is what eclipses do. These are radical changes in the way we look at things and the way we see the world and the way that the world is showing itself to us. So, what is having an opposition between these luminaries? It means that the caregivers of this person were polar opposites. And so for the native, okay, a part of their life path is to hold this Zen-like state that is able to accommodate for both luminaries. Okay, I have moon sextile sun. That means that unless you count the way they are aspected, there's no essential issue in between the lunar and solar parts of myself, okay, which is, it's both a pro. The con perhaps can be that there are a lot of things that I or we did not insist on, whether it's personal pronouns or the way we were being seen or whatnot, that perhaps we should have been more insisting upon. So for the opposite, it can be that it's not the harmony that you hold, but a polarity that you express. The moon in Taurus is exalted. Okay. The sun in Scorpio, as you can see, the sun is the center of the galaxy. And so you put the center of the galaxy deep down in the well. It's not an unnatural place for it to be, but it's also not a natural place for it to be. Okay, so you can make what you want of this. But the moon is pretty much exalted, and here the moon is very much separating from a square to Uranus. And Uranus is retrograde in the first degree of Aquarius, which is also Saturn ruled. So in terms of outer planets tied to inner planets, which is something that I love to look at both in synastries and composites, but also in natal charts. And if you've probably had more than one snapshot of my natal chart, I do not hide it. All the personal planets connect with other planets in one way or another if you computate the in conjunction to Uranus of the luminaries, both luminaries. So let's take a look at from the outer planets. So we have Pluto in Sagittarius generation. They were born in 1996, 2 degrees Sagittarius. Okay, that in terms of evolutionary astrology that looks at Pluto as the path of the soul is not just Rahu and Ketu, which by the way I don't see here. It's probably an evolutionary piece because I don't see Rahu and Ketu. It is so interesting. Tropical zodiac, perhaps we'll do whole sign. Ah, never mind. Let's try to do whole sign. Okay, I still don't see it. Anyway, so the Pluto Sagittarius, so Jupiter ruled Pluto. Pluto is about, I call it composting things. Okay, this is my own take on, or my own take, and honoring evolutionary astrology is not necessarily word to word. Like, I'm not your teacher of evolutionary astrology. It's just honoring them as inspiring my ideas. So Jupiter ruled Pluto is basically composting religion. So the life path of the generation of Jupiter ruled Pluto is exploring the power of belief for the various facets of it. Okay, composting belief, composting religion, composting philosophy. So this generation is going to give us rejuvenation of worldly philosophies, of religion, of the power of seed or the power of semen, but on a philosophical level. But it can be that there is a literal change to the cells or semen. I don't understand what it may imply. Perhaps it's the I'm I wanted to say epigenetics, but the word that came in was eugenics, and it's very true. So yeah, there can be all kind of like cellular absorption observations of the semen or trying to change the semen because Jupiter rules semen. So I guess that can be also epigenetics, which can unfortunately be also eugenics. And we need to be cautious from that. So that's the generation. And of course, reinventing freedom. Okay, concepts of freedom. Freedom is going to mean a whole lot different thing to Pluto generation, and their impact on the world is of course spreading these news and this journey and this the trials and revolutions of that. So Pluto is squaring Mars. It is separating. No, this is not a square. No, it is a square. It is Mars is applying to square Pluto. Okay, Mars is applying to square Pluto. And you always say the fastest moving planet is applying to or separating from. Okay, that's the order of motion. And that gives us a power and drive, but this also gives us the structure of a person that can find themselves having to assert themselves a lot and deal with things like bullying or physical violence, or because it's Jupiter ruled Pluto, so religious violence. And indeed, Iniko describes their experience and look at, oh, yeah, the midheaven here is with Mars. It's not something that we can, why is the midheaven here with Mars? Something is weird here because it is not, it's not the way that's, let's do another, no, it's not with Mars. That I don't think that this is the way whole sign would work. I don't think this is how, like, whole sign is supposed to preserve this midheaven. It doesn't mean that the 10th house is the midheaven, so this was a mistake a bit in the graphics, I believe. So, sorry, back to Placidus. And so this Mars, Iniko describes their upbringing. They were going to the church and they were pretty like naively expressing their own genderless experience or something of the sort, and everybody made them believe that they will burn in hell because of literally who they are, which is horrendous. Okay, so they, from a very young age, they had to like their very being was ostracized, and they had to hide who they are, and lest they be expelled from their community. So they had to leave church to find their power. And whole sign speaking, so 12th, 11th, 10th, 9th. Mars is in the 9th house. So asserting themselves had to do with severing ties, Mars, from, in this case, the church, from a religious institution that is a part of their identity. Okay, this would give us Sun in the 12th house for here. So luminary in the 12th, according to whole sign. So that is one way in which the personal struggle with just being, and in the face of religion coming to the life path of the person, also to the body of the person here. Okay? It's interfering. Person has to find their power in a very visceral, physical sense. Okay? That includes the life path. They have to assert, they have to make a path, literally. This is another sign of the spirit, of being true spirit. This Pluto is in conjuncting Saturn. Or is it? No, it's trining it. So this Pluto is the colors. Opposition is a blue and in conjunct is green, okay? Usually so now. There is a trine between Pluto and Saturn that gives us a harmony between structure and the path of destructuring. So it's kind of like as Iniko find their power in the world, they're also creating a new structure for life, or bringing or reviving old structures, because this Saturn also rules Capricorn, which is the 2nd house, and where Jupiter is in Capricorn. So their skill is basically in reviving certain old structures that in a way that's relevant to the new, to now. The next outer planet is Neptune. And Neptune is trining Venus. So there we have another connection. Neptune can give a sort of a mythical, this person can love myth, can have non-dual experiences, can experience being the void. Okay, so genderless experience. So there are many ways to express being two spirit. You can say I'm gender fluid, you can say I'm gender queer, you can say I'm a man and I'm a woman. Okay, the way I said. And then there is the I'm not a woman, not a man. So this is basically experiencing a void, the void. And here the skill of being the void, okay, the skill of the structure of the void, the structure of the absence of structure, is something that they possess and is in alignment with their voice, their singing, their looks, their appearance. So there we have another contact between outer planets to inner planets that is harmonious. Okay? So we have disharmonious contact between Pluto and Mars, but harmonious contact through music and through history and to some degree teachings and religions that are ancient. Okay, Saturn is the intergenerational tradition. Jupiter can be the guru of the times. So that again supports the life mission. Okay, yes, there is a conflict that you are dealing with, but in this conflict you find new structures or you decompose structures. You can create the new, not just destroy the old, and you can express yourself vocally. You can express yourself with your appearance, and you can find a way to be the void in a way that is visible. And so the next and last outer planet that we look at is Uranus, which is trining this Venus. So Venus is separating from the trine to Neptune and is applying to Uranus. This is Uranus is applying to conjunct Neptune again because it's retrograde. So, and both Neptune to a degree. Okay, I haven't finished with Neptune. I have to go back to Neptune later. This trine to Venus gives us this extra emphasis about the voice as a healer, as Uranus is squaring, pretty much squaring the full moon in the chart. Okay, so this was a lunation. I don't know if it was an eclipse or not, but it was a lunation where there was a download. This is the kind of lunation where the exposure happens through a download, through eureka. And Venus kind of expresses that eureka. Both Neptune and Uranus also making an aspect to Chiron. This tells us, and this aspect is with Uranus. Oh, yeah. Oh, Mercury's on, no, what is on the 29th degree? Mercury's on the 29th degree of Libra. So yet another anoretic is both the ascendant and Mercury. That denotes of this premonition, of this downloads into the world. And we have, this is basically, with Uranus is between, is still a square, even though it's air signs because of the degrees. And this square between the outer planets and Chiron and the midheaven kind of tell us that this person's path or this person's struggle is, which unfortunately is a part of their path, is what they came here to be is at odds with the spirit of the time in which they were born, which is a part of why they are here. So they came here to bring the new world, but unfortunately through conflict. Uranus at the time where, in 1996, Uranus was technology. And they say, no, Uranus is spirituality, it's downloads. So in conflict, right? At the time of their being, Neptune was drunk sailors, 1996. Okay. And misfortunes. Okay. But they came here to say it's non-duality, it's being the void. It's conflict. So people around them, it takes time to recognize, and because those are other planets involved, then even though Iniko are very famous at relatively young age, okay, before the first Saturn return, this conflict, this square, to do with outer planets, is something that comes into full fruition way later in life. Okay, because the cycle of maturation has to do with outer planets. So with Pluto, you would think about the Pluto square. With Saturn, you think about the first Saturn square, and the Saturn returns. 28 years is the Saturn cycle. With Pluto, you would hardly get to our Pluto position if you're very lucky in terms of longevity. And Pluto square can be a time of maturation of Pluto-related matters. You can learn how to deal with Pluto in a different way. Um, and so same with Neptune and Uranus. Uranus, first opposition is in the 40s, and its Uranus return is in the 80s. I took upon myself to do Thema Mundi related art for my Uranus return. Okay, so which is like another Saturn cycle for now. Neptune again. So I don't know exactly where this Neptune matures, but it does tell us that while teenagehood, which is our Uranus square, did bring about both the Saturn square and the Uranus square. Later, the late teens, I think, are Uranus square, probably the 20s, which is why they say the teenage years of the 20s. So the teenage years of the 20s, I guess, those are Uranus. I don't know for sure. And so definitely we've seen this teenagehood where the person, where Iniko leaves the church and venture into their own, or what comprises their own religion or spirituality or path, kind of an out of the matrix path. It's only the beginning of it. A midheaven ruled by a retrograde planet tells us that it's going to be fruition at a later age. So even though they are very famous now, there is something more. There's way more. Like they came here to do something that's way more. Chiron matures at 50. So a lot of, and the closest planet to the midheaven is in the 29th degree. There's something that they came to bring about here, which we will only see in generations, simply put. So yeah, I'm trying to now take a look at certain songs like the King's Affirmation or this I will be one of the greatest, or just wanting to be famous for being me, which you can interpret as the Chiron midheaven kind of thingy. Affirmations, so consciousness affecting declarations, which you can see as both this Mercury that has this contact with here Neptune and Uranus, but yeah. So the descendant is Mercury ruled, and that means that certain partner or partners or opponents can play significant part in the life path of this person. And we are sure that there is a lot to be said, but this is kind of an initial look into the chart of a person who does not coincide with our general experience of sex and gender, and came to bring something new to the world, although they grew up in a Christian family and a musical family. Yeah, there are ties between the inner planets to the outer planets. There are ties between the luminaries to the outer planets. So this very much means that this is a person whose personal being and personal story is the story of the spirit of the times. And so while not all people like that will be famous, um, here they have midheaven in the 11th, so definitely they are. And and that tells us that if you are such a native, it means that when you are experiencing difficulty or a struggle, and you tend to maybe blame yourself, or the teachings of the world tell you to be resilient, to be responsible, to have an agency, it is actually turning to the spirit of the times, and the way that society is shaped, and the way that is about to shape society, that will give you significant, if not more, insight than the personal planet's teachings alone. Okay, you are the kind of person who, let's say, if you do an astrological magic, you are not just doing Jupiter, Venus, or or even Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. You're the type of person that needs to. I'm not saying working with eclipses because that would be misconstrued as manifesting with eclipses, which is not my intention. Um, but rather, and that doesn't say that, like, if you are the person that manifests with eclipses because you were born under eclipses and that is a strong calling for you, like, you're the Gadel point, like, of this group of teaching. Okay, so it's not you're doing something wrong, you're not ostracized. It's just like generally, it's like generally you would not prescribe that. That's what I'm saying. So if you're working magically, it's very likely that you will find out that turning to the outer planets is going to be great benefic influence upon your personality and your personal life. Okay, as an outer planets person, now I'm doing my Pluto square, and turning to Pluto, well, it has greatly benefited my life in general. Allowed me to see things, so simple things, that Saturn ruled Pluto is also the compost in the yard. Like, it doesn't have to be this big, nuclear bomb. It can be the compost in the yard. And while, working on recycling things, it can be the agriculture that you make out of, you found this carton or this, like, I just told my neighbors, bring me those plastic bottles. On a Mercury day it was. Bring me the plastic bottles that you have. I'm going to use them for irrigation. So now, Saturn, Pisces, irrigation, recycling of plastic bottles. Recycling is also Saturn word, but it's also Pluto word. And so you'll see that turning to the planet that is the outer planet is going to be of extra benefit to you than to a person whose personal planets are not all that tied with other planets. Okay? So if you do an astrological magic, you will need to find your own way to communicate with the outer planets. They can also mean that to you, certain things that are horrible in other people's lives, you actually find a way to them. For example, if you are working magically with algol, so for some people, algol can mean horrendous difficulties for you, and with a person who's working magically with algol, it can mean tremendous protection. And for some people, it can mean rage. For some people, it can mean compassion. So that's the power of magic, and this is, working and on a mundane level, not just like magically, but the outer planet signifies the spirit of the times. So when you are doing something for humanity, you're basically bringing in the energy, give place for the other planet in your life. Yeah, and I love to give concrete examples. I would give example right now, not about me, but actually Lada Duncheva, and the way she dealt with a Pluto-Venus opposition. Okay, very inspiringly was to bring her teachings of relational growth and personal growth within relations to the public through her astrological to Astrolada. Okay, that's one great example of dealing that, or in an ancient point of view, burning that karma of relationships in a way that is actually helpful for people to find their power in relationships, and so that can contribute to the personal relationships of the person themselves. So this is not me not wanting to talk about me, but actually it's like thinking, oh, there's a concrete case that I can bring of another person too. So I share that. And they do it in a tremendously great way. So you think about Uranus. So Uranus is a planet of revolution. Yeah. Revolutionizing something. Sharing your downloads. That's in Iniko, it's done through the music. And then we have this music that touches the depth of the soul of so many people. Okay, we felt like, oh, I relate to them. I relate to them, which is quite difficult to get with me. So, yeah. With Neptune, again, certain art, certain work. If a person is dealing with addiction, if that is what Neptune means in their chart, so sharing or helping people who deal with addiction, sharing their story, those can be things that are in favor of humanity. Advocating for people who deal with addiction, for stigma again that people have around what people who deal with addiction are, or all kind of things can be Neptune remediation, or advocating for awareness to missing people, to things that are missing, advocating for certain spies, and that can be a great remedial process for Neptune. So as for the asteroids, we do not have too much time now. Yeah, but this is okay. So we don't know where like is this chart derived from, or what is the rate of this. Iniko, a pop musician best known for tracks like Caught in the Body, Pinocchio and the Motion, Caught in a Body. They are well known on TikTok, have 1 million followers. That is not useful to me, thank you. Read more. Thank you. And it's interesting that they have a Star of David around the astrology chart. Oh, and they have a birthday in 139 days. They are 26 years old now. Pop musician, best known, yeah, that's what we said. Okay, Iniko before becoming famous, so they have zodiac sign of tropical Scorpio, year of the rat in Chinese zodiac. 2018, they released their debut single, Kingdom, so that happened in 2018. If you're doing zodiac releasing or Fidaria, then maybe you want to have a response video to this video and expand on that. They are verified on Spotify since January 2022. They touted more than 25, I don't know what's touted, 25,000 monthly listeners. Oh, they were born in New York. Cover of Aurora's Runaway. Income and net worth. Okay, we don't know. Height and weight or whatnot. Okay, we don't know. So yeah, that is, and they have a. It's funny that because the advertisement here is for Romanian Jews. Maybe you can have Romanian passport. And a jacuzzi in the yard. So I'm more for the jacuzzi in the yard than Romanian passport. But yeah, I have a Dutch one. It did not give me housing. So not because I'm not entitled to, but because of human trafficking that's international, that's happening in the capital. In the capital is Netherlands. So so that is the side note. Thank you for being with me. That was honoring of Iniko. I may have another honoring of Iniko that I don't know if I will post on this channel or another channel, but which will follow a more personal note. But I enjoy also looking at things from the astrological point of view. So have a great day, and I'll see you in the next episode. You can subscribe for more if you like, and leave a comment that you're supportive. We'll see you. Bye bye.